entity between cause and effect by positing an identity in essence and by appealing to that essence to explain the causal potential of the cause. If the essence of the entity is what determines its causal potential, then if that essence remains, the potential should remain as well. If the essence does not remain, then the language of transformation must be abandoned. If the essence remains, and the language of transformation is retained at an accidental level, the claim that there is an essential causal principle must be rejected.
10. How can a cause, having ceased and dissolved, give rise to a produced effect? How can a cause joined with its effect produce it if they persist together? Nagarjuna now returns to the temporal trilemma. As he has argued before, just as a cause cannot follow or be simultaneous with its effect, the precedence of cause over effect is problematic as well. For when there is a cause, there is no effect. When there is an effect, there is no cause. And if we appeal to temporal overlap, we inherit all of the problems with precedence, simultaneity, and collections. In introducing the idea of a cause being joined with its effect, Brel B.A., Nagarjuna is introducing a putative causal link into the discussion. One who proposes simultaneity or temporal overlap of cause with effect might be doing so in order to make possible such a link. But Nagarjuna here claims that positing that link does not overcome the temporal difficulties he has presented. In XX 11-15, Nagarjuna summarizes the results of these arguments. Causes, whether single or composite, cannot precede, coincide with, or follow their effects. Causes cannot produce their effects in isolation, nor can collections of causes inherently produce their effects.
11. Moreover, if not joined with its cause, what effect can be made to arise? Neither seen nor unseen by causes are effects produced. Here Nagarjuna returns to his critique of the idea of a causal nexus. He points out that though that idea has been shown to be incoherent, it is the only way that one can make sense of a real causal link or of inherently existent production. So in its absence, we cannot make sense of the production of an effect by its cause. In the last two lines, Nagarjuna makes use of the strange metaphor of a cause seeing its effect to denote this link. Thongs ba. This is clearly a metaphor for this link, suggesting that whether it is forged by contiguity or by some other means at a distance, it will be explanatorily impotent.
12. There is never a simultaneous connection of a past effect with a past, a known arisen, or an arisen cause.
13. There is never a simultaneous connection of an arisen effect with a past, a known arisen, or an arisen cause.
14. There is never a simultaneous connection of a known arisen effect with a past, a known arisen, or an arisen cause.
15. Without connecting. How can a cause produce an effect? Where there is connection. How can a cause produce an effect? At this point, Nagarjuna turns directly to the connection between emptiness and the dependence of effects on collections of conditions. The opponent now asks how a cause or collection of causes that does not contain the effect in any way can produce that effect.
16. If the cause is empty of an effect, how can it produce an effect? If the cause is not empty of an effect, how can it produce an effect? Nagarjuna, echoing the argument of Chapter 1, replies that only if cause and effect are empty can production be understood. The next verse explains this in more detail.
17. A non-empty effect does not arise. The non-empty would not cease. This non-empty would be the non-ceased and the non-arisen. If the effect were non-empty, as the opponent presupposes in wondering how the effect could be produced from empty causes, then since the inherently existent depends on nothing, the effect would be unproduced and would never cease. But there are no such things. So the putative problem case, the non-empty effect of empty causes, is not even possible. How can the empty arise? How can the empty cease? The empty will hence also be the non-ceased and non-arisen. Nagarjuna emphasizes here the double edge of the ontology of emptiness. Even though it is in virtue of the fact that conventional entities are constantly arising and ceasing that they are empty, their emptiness entails that they do not, from the ultimate standpoint, arise, cease, or abide at all. This is an eloquent statement of the interpenetration of the ultimate and the conventional truths. The very ground on the basis of which emptiness is asserted is denied reality through the understanding of emptiness itself. The emptiness of phenomena is, after all, asserted on the basis of their momentary impermanence. But that impermanence and the very existence of the impermanent objects asserted to be empty is not even present from the ultimate standpoint. Yet that, rather than constituting a self-refutation, constitutes a self-confirmation. For if anything were apparent from the ultimate standpoint, that phenomenon would be non-empty. It is the absence of any such phenomenon, not its presence, that confirms the analysis and that prevents it from lapsing into a view, in the pernicious sense. For cause and effect to be identical is not tenable. For cause and effect to be different is not tenable. Nagarjuna here returns to the business of mobilizing destructive dilemmas against the view that any dependence of effects on collocations of conditions could be inherently existent. The argument in XX is based on the dichotomy of identity or difference of cause and effect and is drawn from Chapter 1. If cause and effect were identical, produced and producer would be identical. If cause and effect were different, cause and non-cause would be alike. For the relation at issue in this chapter to be inherently existent, the collection of conditions would have either to be identical in nature or different in nature from the effect. If identical, we would have the absurd consequence that the effect was self-caused. But if the effect is totally different in essence, we have no explanation of how that collection of conditions produced that effect. If an effect had entitihood, what could have caused it to arise? If an effect had no entitihood, what could have caused it to arise?
This attack on the inherent status of the relation between conditions and effects focuses on arising itself. The effect must either have entitihood or not. If it does, its being caused to arise is self-contradictory. If not, though, from the ultimate standpoint it does not arise. It would follow from either that there is no inherently existent arising and, so, no inherent production from a collection of conditions. The next verse makes this same point from the side of the collection. If the effect produced is not inherently produced, the collection does not inherently produce it. If not, it is not an inherently productive collection. If something is not producing an effect, it is not tenable to attribute causality. If it is not tenable to attribute causality, then of what will the effect be? If the combination of causes and conditions is not self-produced, how does it produce an effect? The ground of an inherently existent relation of production must be inherently existent. But then it could depend on nothing else. It would have to be self-produced. But this is not claimed for the collection of conditions or the relation between them and the effect by the opponent here. It couldn't be. For the whole point of moving to a collection is to avoid the problems of production from a single cause. But collections depend upon their parts and upon the causes of those parts. So no such collection can be self-produced. So, while Nagarjuna can certainly grant that effects are dependent upon collections of conditions, it cannot be that those collections or that dependence exist inherently. Therefore, not made by combination. And not without a combination can the effect arise. If there is no effect, where can there be a combination of conditions? Combinations of conditions, just like individual conditions and just like their effects, can only be conceived of as empty of inherent existence.